What's up, programmers? Welcome back. So we are still doing the pattern fever, and today we'll be encountering a pattern that is called as the Pascals triangle. Now many of people find this pattern quite tough, but if you see this video, I guarantee you that this will make it quite simple and you will never forget it. Now for this pattern, you need something, some prerequisite, right? So what is the prerequisite? Right? This pattern is actually similar to this one. So this pattern was covered in the last video, and I'll not be explaining how to print this pattern. I'll be explaining how to get the logic to get to print the Pascal's triangle. So the printing part will actually be taken from our star part, and we'll just be putting the numbers and the logic into the stuff. So let's look how this is seen on the screen. Now this is actually same as the previous one where we have a number separated by space. There is a space separating every two numbers. Okay, so now how does this actually come? Now if you had studied it in maths, now from 1 you start out with 1, you put this 1 over here, you put this 1 over here, and you get this second pattern. So now after, for the third row, you go with this 1 over here, then you put the add these ones over here and you get the 2, and you put the 1 over here back again, and now you get this 1 by simply putting this 1 over here, then you add this 1 and 2 and you get 3, then you add this 2 and 1 and you get 3, and 1 you put down again. So the same pattern continues. This 3 and 3 will add up to give you 6, 3 plus 1 4, and so on. Now this is how you get this pattern. Okay, so now let's look. Now if you guys know about binomial theorem, okay, so using that also you can get this pattern. Now how do you get that using this? Now if you are a good observer, you must have spotted some difference in this diagram, right? In all the videos, the this we started out from 1, but in this case we'll be starting out from 0. Now there's a particular reason for this, now that I'll be explaining you. Now this thing is like NCR. Now for this you need to know permutation and combinations, a little bit basics. So if you guys don't know, please do Google it, and you'll get a lot of sites which actually explain this quite good. Now for those people who know, we'll continue. Now this NCR, now you should also know the formula to evaluate it. So as you can see, the N for this, the one that appears before your C is actually your row number, and this you have to start from 0. So for this row we have 1 over here. Now after C, because you're printing the first one, so this is 0. Now you're printing the second one, so this is 1. So that way you get these all NCRs. Now if you evaluate them, you will actually get back this only, the same pattern. So now let's look now how does the logic come in. Now this slide shows the logic that is actually used for this. Now if you start out with 1, okay, so you start out with 1 every time. As you can see, your first character that the first character that is printed is 1. Now how do you get the next one? Now if you are a good observer, okay, so what I'm doing is that I start out with 1 and I multiply it with the row number and I get this. So look at this. If I'm on the second row, I start out with 1, I multiply it by 2 and I get this. Multiply by 3, I get this. Multiply by 4, I get this. Now any whole number can be divided by 1. It is same as 4 is same as 4 by 1, right? So I just written it down like that. Now if you see the next boxes to our first the second character that we have printed, now you can see something. If you're a good observer, you'll see something over here. See, this 3 by 1 is actually here 3 by 1. Now this 2 by 1 is actually this 2 by 1. Okay, so now let's see. Now what is happening actually here is that we start multiplying our first element with 2 by 1. Now this 2 is actually the row number, and you have to start out with 1. Now I'll tell you how this 1 comes. Now if you are on the third row, you start out with 1, then you multiply it by 3 by 1 and you get the answer that is to be printed over here. So same for the fourth row. Okay, so now if you go, if you want to, if you are here, okay, so you 2 by 1. Now you want to print the next character. Now what you need to keep in mind is that now you started out by printing by 2. Now decrement this 2 by 1. Okay, so you'll get 1 and increment this 1, so you'll get 2. So to this number we'll multiply 1 by 2 and we'll get our answer. Now so I'll take the fourth row and I'll try to explain it uh, more exhaustively. So let's look. So we start out with 1. We start out with our row number and 1. We multiply the number by 4 by 1 and we get 4 by 1. Okay. So now what we need to do is we need to decrement this 4. So we'll get 3 and we'll increment this 1 and we'll get 2. So we'll multiply these two numbers, that is 4 by 1 into 3 by 2, and we'll get our answer. Now after this we want to print the next character. Now to get the next character, what we need to do is that this 3 we need to decrement it by 1 and we'll get our 2. Okay, so after decrementing 3 we get 2, and after incrementing this 2 we get this 3. So we multiply these numbers and we'll get our output to be printed over here. The same continues till we reach actually 1. So even if you see the first row, we started out with 1, we multiplied it by 1 because it is a row number and divided it by 1, so we'll actually get this 1 only. Okay, so this is how the logic comes in. Now let's quickly jump into the code. I know it's kind of difficult. Now if you find it difficult, please do watch the previous part of the video again till you get the logic clearly. Take a pen and paper and try solving it for the fifth row. Okay, so if you can get it for the fifth row, you have completely got the logic. So let's move to our coding part. So I have just created a pattern print 7.c and I have written down few things. Now I've just these statements are taking the input from the user for how many rows he want us to print, and these will be the loop variables. Now these I have taken from the previous one. Now we'll just be changing this column star that we used for star printing in the previous with our character. Okay, so now we need to start our coding. Now for the rows we'll be using the outer loop. And now if you remember, we start out with the 0th row. Okay, not from the first row. So we start from 0 and then go on till our 4. Okay, so this is what you actually need to remember, because we are starting from 0, not from 1. So let's start from 0 and we'll go till row is less than our number of rows to be printed. Okay, so now that we have written our outer loop, now let's get on to the inner loops. Now first that we need to do is we need to print our spaces. Now I'll be assuming that you watched my previous video and I'll be putting the code over here for printing spaces. Okay, so I have written the code for printing spaces. Now after this comes our main logic. Now first thing that you need to remember is that we need to always start our printing character from 1. So if you see closely, we always start out with 1. Okay, so this I'll call it as a print character and it will always start out with 1. Okay, so I'll call it print char, which will start out from 1. Okay, and we need two other variables. Now which are those two variables? Now if you look closely, we have to multiply it by certain value and then divide it by certain value to get our next value. Okay, so if you look anywhere over here, these arrows, you're multiplying by a value and also dividing by a value. Okay, so this is what for what we'll be needing two variables. I'll call this as numerator and I'll call this as denominator. So I've created two variables, that is numerator and our denominator. Now if you remember, look, now we start out our numerator by what is our current row. So if we are on the 4th row, we'll start out with the 4. If we are on the second row, we'll start out with 2. But our denominator always starts out with 1. Okay, so I'll just do that. So our numerator starts from our row and our denominator starts by 1. So now I'll be writing the for loop for printing our numbers. Now I'll be using the call chars variable for this loop. Now we'll be starting this from 0. Now the reason for starting this from 0 is because the first one, the character that you're printing, which is 0 C0 or 1 C0, 2 C0 or so on. So we have to start this with a 0. So I started it from 0. Now this call char will, so now that we have written our loop, so first thing that we need to do is we need to print our character, right? The first thing that we need to do is we need to print our number. So I'll just put %d space and we'll print our print character. So now that we have done this, now to get our next character that is to be printed, we'll look at this slide. Now you start out with 1 and then you multiply it by your numerator and denominator and you get the next print character. So we know that our numerator, which we have already declared, and our denominator, which also we have declared, we'll start out with our previous number, say any number. So I'll take this one. Now you need to multiply it by your numerator and our denominator and we'll get our next character, the next number that is to be printed. We need to multiply the print character with our numerator and we need to divide it by our denominator. Okay, so now that we have done this, we have got our next character, but we are forgetting something. Now if you look, every time the numerator is decreased by 1, okay, and our denominator is increased by 1. So you look at any case over here, look at this one. Now you start out with 3, you have to decrease it by 1, so you get 2, and you have 2 over here, and you need to increase it to 3. So let's decrease our numerator by 1 and increase our denominator by 1. So now that we have done this, now the next thing that we need to do is that we need to go to the next line. So we need to put a \n. Okay, so now that we have completed our code, now let's compile and see if we have any errors. So no errors. So let's execute if we to see if we are getting the proper output. So say I want to print, say, 4 rows. So okay, so we have got a proper output. Now let's try for 5 rows. So as you can see, we have got the output which we desired. Now I agree this program is slightly tougher, but if you have any doubts, please look through the video again. I hope that will solve your doubts, but still if you have any doubts, please put it in the comment section or in the discussion section of our channel. That's it for this tutorial. Please do subscribe to our channel, like our videos, and if you have any suggestions or any program that you want us to do, please put it there, put it in the comment section. Thank you.